Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're continuing our tropical freeze loading screen series with World 2. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. I can't believe it's been 10 paintings since I first did World 1. So here's my sketch back from World 1, and I just wanted to point out that the colors were a lot more green on this one. On World 2 they're going to be pure blue, which I'm excited for because blue's my favorite color. So I have a sketch for World 2, and you can kind of see this plan here. Just like always, I'm going to be starting in my background and then working my way forward until I get to that solid silhouette black. There's going to be some cliffs in here, some pine trees, some grasses, a fence, and then it's going to go into the solid silhouette part. In the last painting I did Donkey Kong riding on Rambi, and I thought it'd be nice to move on to another character, and Dixie's my favorite and blue's my favorite color, so I thought it'd be nice to have her for this one, especially because blue and pink are kind of nice together. And I'm going to have her running on top of a rolling Donkey Kong. So like I said, I'm starting with my background, so I'm going to start mixing up colors for that. I've mixed up two colors for this gradient. My darker color for the top is a cyan ultramarine blue mix, and my bottom color is the same thing with some titanium white. I'm just going to be mixing these two colors together back and forth until I have a nice transition with the two. Now I've done two things to help facilitate that. The first thing is I used a lot of paint, and I have a lot of paint on my palette. That way I can make sure I can fill this whole space on this 18 by 24 canvas. And then I also put some additive into the paint to help it stay wet longer. And I did that using retarder. It kind of helps with the drying time and making it last a bit longer. That way I can kind of blend on my canvas here, and I don't have to worry about it drying or making some weird lines. So I'm going to be using a nice big brush, getting it just a touch wet. I don't like to add a whole lot of water to my acrylics because if I do, sometimes they don't stick to the canvas as well. If you water them down, it lessens the binding that's in the paint, and so it doesn't adhere and bind to the canvas, and that's not good. So I'm going to be starting with my lighter color. So I'm just going to go ahead and go back and forth and kind of feather it down here into the bottom. I did use a black gessoed canvas for this painting, and there's not really a particular reason for it. The last one I think I used a white gessoed canvas. It doesn't really matter. This painting itself is going to be very dark, so it's going to kind of help me out, but it's not necessary. You can use a white canvas if you want, or if that's what you have. So I'm just feathering this up, and I'm just going to kind of bring some of this lighter color upwards. And I'm trying to keep my strokes horizontal, but sometimes I do kind of the zigzag motion, and then I just make sure I go back and forth afterwards. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of my darker blue color and start to bring that in. And then once I have a good amount of it on the canvas, like not a thin coat, it's kind of a thicker coat, I can go ahead and do the zigzag motion between both of these. And then, like I said, go back and forth to make sure my lines are parallel instead of horizontal. And that's going to start to help bring in this blend here between the two. And I can start to pick up some more ultramarine blue, cyan mix, and bring that up top here, and start to bring that down into this too. I had used this chalk pastel to draw in the mountains. Now, unlike the first one I did, everything kind of got darker the closer it got. With this one, these mountains are actually going to be lighter, and then everything else is going to work darker towards black. So I have that same color I used down here, but with more titanium white, and this is going to be my base for the mountains. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill these in, and just giving them this solid layer of light blue. With both of these filled in, I like this one better, and I had drawn both of them this way. I just ended up liking how I did this one more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one and kind of just round some of the edges so it's a little bit less straight line mathematical. My new color is this one here. I thought about doing kind of these colors getting darker and darker and then mixing more black once I got to this, but if I do that, somewhere in here, these colors already exist on the canvas, and somewhere in here, it's going to blend in and you won't be able to see the layer. So what I decided to do is to take these and add more black into them. And then as I work my way forward, I'm going to be adding more blue to each layer and more black to each layer. So it's going to be getting darker and bluer the closer we get to the solid black. So for this one, you can see it's quite gray. And I'm going to go ahead and paint in this layer here. I went ahead and drew it in chalk pastel, but it's even hard for me to see, so I'm sure it's not really showing up on the camera. But once I finish this layer, I'm going to go ahead and do the trees that kind of stick out of it, but I'm starting with the base just because it's nice and flat and it has solid lines and it doesn't have kind of the feathery motion of the pine trees. The technique I'm using for these trees is the same one I did for the Shoshone painting and for the Snowman Mother 3 painting. So I started by drawing the line, and I kind of gave myself a little bit of a triangle so I know where the branches should go. And then I'm starting here at the top and just kind of drawing in some branches, and then just a few kind of little areas where there could be pine needles. So I'm going to go back and forth, left and right on all of these and start to fill in these tree shapes, working my way down and then across the canvas with all of these. My next layer is definitely bluer and darker, so I just took this same color I had here, mixed more of my blue and more carbon black into it, and then I decided it's going to get a little confusing trying to keep all of these layers straight. So in my sketchbook I made myself a little chart. Here I have my base color, which is this one up here. I wrote down what's inside of it and where I used it. Next to it, I wrote down Mountain 1, which is this faraway mountain, and then I wrote down what colors are in it. The next one is this layer here. I wrote down Mountain 2 because it's the second mountain in the order, and pines. And then I wrote down what's in that color mix. The same down here for this next layer, and this is the layer I'm currently working on. So I have Mountain 3 and then pines. And then my next layer is going to be just a couple pine trees. The layer after that's going to be maybe a pine tree or two, some grass along the bottom, and a couple of these leaf trees like this, but not in the solid black yet. My last layer before the black is going to be some more grass, some more of the leafy trees, and then the fence that I have right here. And then I just have a tiny little space for the carbon black just because that's what it's going to be and I know what it's going to be, and it's going to be pretty obvious what's going to be carbon black. So this little chart will help me in case I need to make up some more colors later. I can go ahead and test it against the paper here instead of on the canvas. This next layer is going to feature some grass along the bottom, a couple of these deciduous leafy trees, and that's kind of it. I need to make sure I cover up anything like this where the canvas is showing this high up, because otherwise it's going to show later if I don't put anything in front of that. So I've mixed up obviously a darker blue color, and for this part down here I'm just going to kind of start by filling in this line, just to make sure that's completely solid. And then I'm going to take some of this paint and just kind of do some long streaky lines for the grass. this last layer is going to be a lot like this darkest blue layer. The trees are going to be pretty much the same, they're just going to be bigger with more of like the mass across the top just to fill that sky part in. The bottom though is going to have this kind of scalloped hill going on, and then kind of going up from each of them is going to kind of be some grass, and I did kind of draw it kind of rounded like smaller scallops, but I am going to do it more like this grass here. And then every so often I'm just going to put a couple ferns. So I'm just going to go ahead and block the majority of this in and then start to fill in some details like the ferns and the grass and the leaves. The reason that I use carbon black when I do these silhouette paintings is because golden makes a high flow carbon black, and I can put it in these paint markers and do finer lines than I could than with the heavy body. Because the heavy body is so thick, it's sometimes hard to do those tiny fine details. It's a lot easier when the paint is more liquid, and I can't water it down because then it won't stick to the canvas as well. So I buy the high flow carbon black and put it in this paint marker, and then I can do things like this and kind of outline where I want these things to go, and then go back in later with the heavy body paint and fill in these leaves. In the silhouette levels, she has a pink hat and a pink vest, and everything else is in silhouette. So I went ahead and did everything in silhouette, and then I used white for her hat and her vest. And that's because I want to make sure that the pink really stands out. It's going to kind of be a primer or a layer between the two to make sure the pink isn't getting muddied by the blue underneath. Once that's dry, I can go ahead and do the pink. Also, over my name, I used a transparent phthalo blue just to kind of make it match the rest of this. Otherwise, I thought the white really wasn't going to work because nothing else is white on this canvas. The very last thing to do is to fill in all of the white parts pink. So I've mixed up just a little bit of pink here on my palette, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in on top of the white. And we're done! We have World 2 from Tropical Freeze. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a phone case or a poster or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes. And I'll see you again here for another video game painting.